Back. If you're not, thank you, Mr. Tung. I appreciate the laughing reaction. Mr. Dan, did you just go to sleep? All right, it just looks like you're popping up. Oh my god, what's happening? All right, welcome back, everybody. Second part of the workshop is going to be shorter than the first half. This one is going to be focusing more on the speaking aspect of the test. So, review and extension, a reminder about our modern learner issues that we need to reorient to the students. What do they need? And how with one of the big issues for them, especially these high school students, they don't know how to build an argument in English. They don't illustrate it with a real world example, and how that argument building that we just experienced with writing task 2 is the same style that we need for speaking part 3. And for teaching speaking, tech solutions. So I'm a big proponent of using tech in a principled and judicious manner. The right tool for the right place, how it can be useful for developing self-awareness. And maybe you're the same situation, I imagine you are, but as teachers, we can only show the students the door. For actual learning, they are the ones that need to walk through the door, and they need to become self-aware. They need to recognize when they are making mistakes, pronunciation issues. If they don't recognize it inside themselves, then they're not likely going to get any better. So how can we develop self-awareness, and how can we nurture their growth? Before moving on to ChatGPT and AI support part 1, about how ChatGPT can be used for topic education and developing topic-specific vocabulary. Part 2, how ChatGPT is excellent for voice-to-text transcription, and how this can be used for language feedback. And then finally, part 3, something I find quite exciting is how ChatGPT can be used for live examiner practice, and how it's got a special transfer value to speaking part 3. But we'll get into that as we get along. So the modern profile, university abroad still happens, but high school and even middle school students are studying IELTS, and how this is different than what has happened before. And you still have some who are working professionals that will put this on their CV. Strongest skills, reading and listening, but that writing and speaking lag far behind their receptive skills. And the issues, because of this age group, that they don't have awareness of English argument building, that upside down triangle that I talked to you before about the topic, sentence, supporting idea, and real world example, that they don't plan, and their lack of world knowledge. So the mindset previous to the break, we talked about the cradle to the grave approach, that we need to identify all of the variables involved, think about them from their start, and how do they finish. And that this same mindset can still be applied for part 3. Students will get questions that maybe they've never thought about before, that this strategy can be used for critical thinking for these questions. Number 1, what are the potential benefits of space tourism? Cradle to the grave approach. Let's go to the very beginning and take it to the end. So who am I going to talk to this time? Let's go with Mai Fan. Hello, Mai. It is Mai.
Hi. Yes,
Hi.
it's Mai. Hi.
Hello. Hi, Mai. So, cradle to the grave approach of space tourism. What are the different variables involved for space tourism? What do we need so that we can have space tourism?
Of space tourism meaning that you're using map to go travel. Just,
Sorry, using Mac
map,
to go travel.
map.
I don't think maps. I'm thinking about like a spaceship going up into outer space, going to the moon, maybe going to Mars, something like that. Maybe they don't even go to Mars. Maybe they just go out of our atmosphere. So now that we've got that clarified, space tourism, what do we need so that we can have space tourism?
We need a lot of money. I think we need financial.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. What are we going to use that money for, though? What are some physical features of space
Uh,
tourism?
we're gonna use that money first to build like a ship, a rocket first, right?
Yep.
So you,
Okay, and so then we've got the rocket ship, and then you need to think about the materials of the rocket ship. And I know you don't know everything of the materials, but you can make some educated guesses about the materials. What do
first
we need for a
metal.
spaceship? Metal, right? And we already talked about metal. Is metal good for the environment? The getting of metal?
No, of course not.
Oh, horrible for the environment. Yep, sure. What else do we need to make the spaceship move?
Fuel.
And where do we get that?
Well, we get it from gas, from oil.
Yep. Yep. And so then we're talking about extracting those and then the combusting of that. What results from the combustion of the fuel?
Well, the exhaust film, right? Uh, the
Mm,
the carbon, the CO2 that will get out.
yes.
Yeah,
Yep. Carbon dioxide,
carbon
greenhouse
dioxide.
gases, and then that this has been linked to global warming and climate change. Okay, so that's the negatives. But can you think of any positives about space tourism?
Mm, positive. I think that it encouraged people to know more about the astronomy, right? People learn about the the universe, the thing around them, and it helps for science because I think that we have like a science called space science, right? But we study about black hole or all kind of thing about the astronomy,
Sure.
and yeah,
Right.
and
And just putting, I think you might have said astrology first, but then you shifted. I definitely heard you say astronomy later. And just for anybody else out there, for the clarification, I used to find these confusing. And astrology, logi is usually talking about a study, but astrology is talking about the horoscopes that would be coming from the stars. And then astronomy is the study. So, making sure that you are aware of those distinctions. Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Mai. I'm going to ask somebody else for some benefits. Let's go with Ms. Twee. Ms. Twee, can you think of any other benefits of space tourism?
I think that it will extend our knowledge about the cosmos, and
Great. Yeah,
a great chance for us to discover the universe and know about other planets or other galaxies.
sure. Yeah, yeah. And, I'm one of the big arguments from Elon Musk about going to Mars is so that we can be a multi-planetary species. Why would we want to do that? Every now and then, a life. Think about the dinosaurs. They're not here anymore. Why? Well, usually we think of an asteroid hitting the planet, and that resulted in climate change, and that killed all of the dinosaurs. The same thing can happen to us. There are multiple ways that the environment that we need to live in can be destroyed quickly. And so if we move into space tourism, then we have the chance of making sure that humanity will survive if some apocalypse happens to Earth. Next, is it better to repair or restore historical places, or leave them original and untouched? Give you a moment to think about that. Mr. Hip, are you there? Can you hear me?
Hey, I'm here.
Hi, Mr. Hip.
Or-
What do you think about this one? Cradle to the grave approach.
I think it depends. It depends on the current situation of the actual site. So something might be beyond repair, so it needs to be like replaced. But for something like you can preserve the historical aspects and also the values of it, and maybe also the value to the surroundings, maybe it should be keep untouched. That's my opinion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think about Hue and the citadel of Hue. I have not been there for a few years, but I remember going there 5 years ago, 6 years ago, walking around in the Citadel, and they are restoring it, and it looks beautiful what they have done. But going outside of the usual touristy area, and I could see bullet holes in the walls from when the American-Vietnam War happened there. And so then, if we are repairing and restoring that, do we remove that bullet hole? Do we make it a beautiful wall again? It'll look nice, but for me, that bullet hole was part of the history of that place, and I can feel the hairs on my wrist and my arms sticking up, because I imagine it takes me back to that horrible tragedy of all of the lives that were lost in that war and the people that suffered as a result of that. And so, again, some interesting thought. Last one to consider. How do you think the role of technology in education has changed in the past decade? Give a moment for processing, and then how about Mr. Din Vu Dang? Is your name Vu? Okay, thank you, Vu. What do you think about this one? Hmm. Right. Yes. I like your idea. The internet, you're beginning, though, talking about the military and stuff. Keeping in mind that this is about the past decade. So that's going back only to 2014. I mean, the internet was available back then. But if you hammer home about the increased prevalence of smart device penetration throughout society, and you were making that point by the end, but really punching that, and then you can tie it in together. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So trying to apply this cradle to the grave approach as you can, when you can, and sharing this process with your students can help with that. Continuing on, developing self-awareness and nurturing growth before we look into some AI/ChatGPT. Developing self-awareness. A great tech opportunity, recording yourself and listening again. Maybe you're already doing that, but I've experienced a lot of my students are not doing this, and they hate doing it. Do you do it? Have you recorded yourself and listened again? A lot of people going, yeah. Oh, Hank, I saw you put a thumbs up. You do that? Yeah, great. How do
Yes.
you feel about it? Do you like it?
I mean, for some people, they are not in favor of listening to their own voice, but I kind of do. Yeah.
Yeah, listen, I gotta say, you've got a nice voice. You have a pleasant to listen to voice. But the problem for a lot of people is the voice that they hear from their smart device is different than the voice that we experience right now. And why is
Exactly.
that? Well, I mean, the sound is generating inside us, and our hearing ability is also inside us. So it's going through us. That's why we sound differently. By the way, if you want to know a low-tech solution for how do you sound to other people, one hand on your side of your nose, the other hand behind your ear. And this is actually now starting to catch more sound waves and funneling it into yourself. So this is closer to what other people hear. And so because that's so different than what we're used to, we hate it. We don't like it. But the more times you do it, the more you get used to it. Even for me, I've been told, I hope I don't sound arrogant, but people tell me I have a nice voice. I have that low, deep voice. But even for me, when I hear myself as a recording, I'm like, really?
Like a
That's what I sound like?
baritone kind of voice.
Technically bass.
Mm.
Baritone is a slightly higher pitch than me, but yeah, bass voice. But the more times you do that, first of all, you start to notice you can be focusing on the pronunciation issues. Plus, I've recorded myself a lot, and I've used that to shape my voice so that the voice that you hear now is not the voice that I used 20 years ago. This is my growth into it. So, especially useful for speaking part 2, where somebody can script out the answer. Oh, let me get myself out of the way here so you can see that again. Right. Especially useful for speaking part 2, the potential of scripting out an answer and then listening again. And then when listening, there can be a target issue. So the famous last sound issue is still out there. You'll still encounter people with it, although I feel it is fading. But then what about countable nouns? This is a very common language mistake that my students will have. They will forget to make it plural when it should, or they'll forget the article that should go along with it. And then nurturing growth that can go along with this. Once you have this artifact, this video recording, then it can be used with other things. So one site, Edpuzzle, that can be used. You can pause after target sounds. So one thing I'll do, I will take a recording from my students. I only use it within my class. And so the example video I will share with you, it's going to be me, because that's my students' recordings are private. That belongs to them. And moreover, we have young learners, and we have a duty of care where we need to be protecting them. But I'll share with you what can be done with Edpuzzle as I look to try to find my screen. There we go. Edpuzzle. And I can close that down now. So Edpuzzle, free to use. Any video, you can upload your video. You can also use just about any YouTube video for this. And I hope this should be loud enough. I have to admit that I don't really care that much about typical works of art like a traditional painting or sculpture. However, something which is loosely related to it, depending on how we define the subject, is a garden cafe, and I hope you don't mind if I talk about that instead. I consider this to be a piece of art because it is a uniquely designed garden cafe, which, in my opinion, is a living, breathing masterpiece. And then you can see, you can put in a multiple choice question here. And so multiple choice, you can have multiple answers. You see I've included Vietnamese translations in there to support those who are weaker. I throw in a joke answer every now and then to keep my students engaged. But the thing I like about it is the rewatch ability. If they're not sure, they can go back. Right now, I'm sharing this directly with you, but you can create a link that you then disseminate with your students, and they consume this video on their own. They can use their own smart device, they can have earphones, they can be listening to this in class, or you can make this homework, something that they do on their own, and you can be developing their listening abilities with this, whatever you want to target. So, for example, those final sounds. This could be, instead of me, this could be a student's recording, and then you listen through and you pause periodically. Ask them, do you hear them producing that final sound? Is the last sound there? Something along those lines. There's many different ways that Edpuzzle can be used. And as I said, free. Doesn't cost you anything. It limits the number of videos you can make that you can use, but then you can always create a new email address and create a new account, and then you're fine. Right, continuing on. Strengths about it. So the ability to re-listen and to develop attentional focus. This can increase motivation as it can come from them. And you can hand over the listening experience to the students, increasing their autonomy. If you set this as homework, they are doing the listening on their own. Or you do it in the classroom if you can get them to bring in their own earphones. Otherwise it gets messy. Or it can be a shared experience as well, where you are just presenting this, and I've done games where if they want, they can raise their hand. Please, I want to listen again. You bring it back, ... trying to get the highest score. Potential drawbacks. Anytime you introduce tech, you have potential complications. There can be connection issues with the internet, with the Wi-Fi. It may require an app. And then people have storage limitations on their phone. Why did I buy a 64 gigabyte phone? I wish I had gotten 256 gigabytes, etc. Yes, Mr. Duke, I will be continuing on with that. I have some ideas to be continued to share. Let me know if you have more questions at the end of the session. And then the potential of hacking results. So you should not be using these things for assessments. It should be for development. By the way, Kahoot, if you are not aware, Kahoot is hackable. People are able to get the correct answer immediately. It's highlighted for you. So again, don't be using these for assessments and keeping an eye on them. Next one after that, ChatGPT AI support part 1, topic education, topic specific vocabulary is next before we get into some of the other ones that AI can help us with. So personal mindset, for me, if you're not using AI, you're probably falling behind. AI isn't going to take your job. People who know how to use AI will take your job, displace you. And there is a lot of productivity benefits that can come from it. But as we go on, we are learning more and more about the limitations of AI, such as an earlier question about getting a band score. I don't think you should be asking AI to give a band score for speaking or for writing, instead asking it for feedback on the language. Valid concerns. Other issues that can happen. Incorrect information can come from this. AI hallucination. Data privacy if you start to let AI getting access to your accounts. Over-reliance and dependence. So skill depletion. Maybe less able to come up with ideas. And the last one was, I believe, a robot apocalypse with the world being taken over by AI. I don't think we have to worry about that too much right now, but that there should be points. Yeah, AI sentience leading to the robot apocalypse. Anyway, not going to happen anytime soon there, everybody. So, next topic, education. Reminder, we're dealing with high school students. They just don't have the life experience of a nearly 45-year-old adult. I have been consuming information for 30 years longer than them. I know more things. So what can we do to fast track this? They lack their life experience. So nothing replaces input for language development. Consuming extensive reading and listening leads to better language users, and too often this is underdeveloped. People need to read, people need to listen to English if they want this to be improving. And when I say extensive, ideally doing this for pleasure of some sort. For reading, one thing that I recommend for multiple students to do, the Harry Potter books in English. J.K. Rowling wrote the first book for 8 or 9-year-old readers. But then her second book came out a year or two later, and these people became older. So book 2 is more advanced language than book 1. Book 3, book 4, by the time book 7 comes around, that is adult level language. This is very proficient, and it's interesting to read. A lot of them read Harry Potter already in Vietnamese. Encourage them to read it in English, but graded readers are also something that can be utilized. Moreover, TV shows. Watching English TV, listening to English. Some of the best Vietnamese speakers of English I know, they were addicted to Friends, the TV show. Friends, How I Met Your Mother, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. There are so many great TV shows out there that can be used for A, enjoyment, but B, developing English. And so encouraging them to get away from Korean romances and getting more into English shows. Listen, I mean, we need to have a balance. I don't say eliminate the Korean romance, but if English is a goal for you and for your students, then getting into English shows is a good choice. But we also need to be looking at ways of fast tracking these things. Yes, so at least 10 minutes a week discussing recent shows. And this is something that is authentic in that native speakers, this is what we do. I am constantly asking my friends about TV shows that they're watching. And then the knock-on improvements for listening comprehension and speaking, such as chunking and the English stress-timed rhythm. If you're not familiar with either of these terms, just briefly, English has a rhythm. English sounds like a bit of a dance. This is very different than Vietnamese production, and listening is massive for leading to these improvements. Right, continuing on. So, how can we be improving topic education? AI prompted to supply 5 valid ideas on a given topic, such as, what are the potential benefits of space tourism? Economic growth, and then it adds to it. As a developing industry, space tourism could create new markets and job opportunities, boosting the global economy. Technological advancements. Early investment in space tourism could drive innovations in transportation and safety, benefiting other sectors in the long term. These were given to me by ChatGPT, and so you can quickly educate your students on these topics because they may have never thought about this before, and they may not have the background knowledge to discuss these things. So ChatGPT can fast track the education on these. There's a few more: environmental awareness, blah, 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 blah. Next. Continuing on, please. Topic-specific vocabulary. AI prompted to supply for vocabulary for questions and topics. And then you have the option to translate this into Vietnamese, which ChatGPT is generally better than Google Translate now for its translations. You saw that with the model essay I shared with you. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. It reads a little weird, but comprehension is communicated with it. So next after that, so the restore historical places, here is a model answer that's provided by ChatGPT. When deciding whether to restore historical places or leave them untouched, it's important to balance several factors. Preserving original condition maintains cultural significance and heritage integrity, etc. And you can see that I have bolded some topic-specific vocabulary that ChatGPT has passed along for them to be using. Is this a perfect answer? No, it is not. There are issues. And throwing it out to you. What do you think? Do you see any problems with this answer? Feel free to raise a hand, type it into the chat, turning on your microphone. Awkward silence instead. No? Nothing? Okay. Thank you, Chi.
All right. I'll take a guess. It really
Sure.
feels like it's not an opinion. It feels like it's just like vomiting, like, a factual information instead of giving an opinion or something.
Okay, yeah, I mean, so it's ChatGPT for English is okay for sounding natural, but it's not perfect. So you're right, it is. It's a computer program that put this together. Any other ideas? And thank you, Chi. No, English logical progression. Do you see any real world examples? No, so it's missing that to illustrate the point, and that's something that I was emphasizing in the first half of our workshop together. So give me the example of Hui, give me the example of Mi Sun, whatever example you want to go with. And then the other thing too is for lexical variety. I noticed heritage in here, heritage as well, heritage again, heritage 4 times. An examiner, there's a very good chance the examiner will pick up on that and say, lexical variety, they reused heritage too many times. I'm not convinced. So yeah, that could be hurting this answer. ChatGPT translation for you. I'll give you a moment to read that. That's the example that I just gave you. Oh, sorry, Dan. Just seeing that's still reading now. Ten more seconds. 2, 1, moving on. So before I move on, just a reminder that so you can get these model answers with the topic-specific vocabulary from ChatGPT, and you can use ChatGPT to translate it for you so that you don't have to do the heavy lifting of the translation. I do know that some schools, they implement an English-only policy. I understand some of the reasons for that. When I worked at ILA, they had an English-only policy. However, from the latest research that I've heard about, translation is fine for learning another language. That's certainly okay. And I wouldn't be surprised if you're still doing aspects of that with your own language progression. Next after that, voice-to-text transcription and language feedback. Part 2 with ChatGPT, voice-to-text transcription. So this has a superior voice-to-text available on smart devices in Google Docs or MS Word. Voice-to-text is arguably the fastest way to get information into a document, into text. I use this when I'm using Google Docs. If you're not using it already, I do recommend it. So tools, and you can see voice-to-type, voice-to-text. Hi there, comma, how are you doing? Question mark. I'm having a great day, thank you very much. Exclamation mark. So you can see how fast that gets in there, but that I need to say the punctuation. I probably should have punctuation in here. ChatGPT does this, and you don't need to say the punctuation. ChatGPT will put the punctuation in for you. So yes, for your own productivity, this is something that you could use to make yourself a little bit faster for the creation of materials. But back to the point, how this could be used for speaking part 2 transfer. So previously I suggested about using a script. This time, no, doing this authentically, no script. So this would be more context-dependent learning, about 1 minute for notes and speaking for up to 2 minutes. And then you'll have an authentic log of their actual speech, every word that they've said. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. It will fix grammar mistakes sometimes, not always. So it will make, for example, if they say a noun as an uncountable form when it should be plural countable form, ChatGPT has been known to put the S on that noun for them. It has corrected that. But it does not always correct grammar mistakes. And then you can combine this with a video recording or an audio recording of it, and then they can be compared and contrasted. Was the pronunciation of what I did, was that the same as the ChatGPT log? Moreover, as your teacher, as their teacher, you can combine that. You can get the video, you can get the ChatGPT transcription. You can compare that yourself if you want. Yes. And then you have the potential for feedback. So this, as I said, can be shared with you, but immediately, and arguably hot feedback is better than delayed feedback for learning. So the students can put into ChatGPT to prompt for feedback on grammar and vocabulary. ChatGPT, how can my grammar and vocabulary be improved? And then after it gives a list of the areas that need to be improved, it can also, you can ask ChatGPT, prompt it for language exercise suggestions. What are some exercises I can do to improve my countable nouns for the future? Finally, the one that I'm quite excited about the live examiner practice, part 3. And, sorry, seeing Duc Tuan Lei with your next question there. Is it a good idea to include numbers and statistics in my examples when writing task 2 essay? So Mr. Duc, I'm not a big fan of that one because I feel like they are mostly made up a lot of times. I prefer to keep away from data, but I have seen it done successfully occasionally. So if I was teaching this to students, I would leave that for a more advanced class. I would not use that with somebody that's still newer, bordering on intermediate, because I just in marking writings, I read it, I'm like, I can tell this is a lie, I can tell this is made up. And so then I start to be suspicious of the writing, and I grade it more strictly. So if I'm doing this, I have a feeling that other writing examiners are doing that too. 40% of students, Vietnamese students in Hanoi use ChatGPT, and 90% of them got band 7 thanks to it. Yes. Should we give our own experience in speaking part 2? Yes. I believe that name should be Mr. Law. Yes, speaking part 2, definitely your own experience. Speaking part 3 is where we should not be using our own experience. So not talking about my family, not talking about my experiences, instead using third person, he, she, it, the world in general. But part 1 and part 2, perfectly fine to be talking about ourselves. Right, live examiner practice, continuing on. So, audio interaction with ChatGPT. You can instruct ChatGPT to play the role of an IELTS speaking examiner. However, you do need to have more instructions. You need to embed instructions from the beginning in a new thread to make it the IELTS speaking examiner thread. And it can do a pretty darn good job of being an IELTS speaking examiner. So this has the potential for any section. For speaking part 1, you can prompt it to ask typical speaking part 1 questions for particular topics. You can get ChatGPT to start doing new topics on its own, using its own initiative. It should be pretty good for, because it's going to scour the web and it's going to go find different topics from all of the different IELTS sites and then start to ask questions on those. But speaking part 3, I feel, is where it really shines, because you can instruct it to ask follow-up questions that challenge participants on their answers, such as what IELTS examiner could do and will do. So I have an example of this for you. That would be this one right here, this one. Bring this up to full screen, take my volume to maximum. So I press the audio button, bottom right, thumbs up. Now I will put my thumb on this circle to take manual control. Act as an IELTS speaking examiner and ask me a speaking part 3 question on the topic of education. Listen to my response and ask follow-up questions based on it.
How do you think the role of technology in education has changed in the past decade?
Now, if you didn't hear that, that did sound a little quiet to me. The question was, how do you think the role of education with technology has changed in the past decade? There have been a myriad of changes which have resulted because of technology integration into the classroom in the last 10 years or so. I mean, there has been the incorporation of learning management systems in order to better keep track of the students. There have been the opportunities to do online learning, such as through synchronous learning with Zoom platforms, or even learning from YouTube videos that can be accessed. But a big game changer has been the development of AI and its ability to personalize learning.
Considering the increased use of AI in education, what challenges do you foresee in ensuring that all students have equal access to these advanced education?
And again, if you didn't hear that, considering the development of AI, what can be done to ensure that all students have equal access to this technology? It listened to my answer and it gave a suitable follow-up question that challenges me on that. And so there are not many opportunities to practice the follow-up questions. And so if somebody's not familiar with answering follow-up questions, this could just have them having that moment of, I don't know. And then that means that they won't perform very well. So the more chances they have to practice this, the better. Now, how could you do this in a low-tech form? I mean, first of all, they could be with you, and you can give them the follow-up questions. And then once you teach them, you could have them partner up and have one person is the examiner listening to the answer, and then they can ask a follow-up question based on that. but if they're not used to doing it, then they will struggle to do ones well. So ChatGPT has the potential of filling in this hole. Moreover, great opportunity for practicing at home by myself. I don't need anybody else around. Moreover, ChatGPT will still be transcribing everything the person says. So after the exam is finished, after they're finished with their training session, their practice session, all of their words are there. And same thing as before, where you can ask ChatGPT, give me feedback on my language, my vocabulary, my grammar. How can this be improved? What are exercises I can do to improve this, etc. One thing to be careful about, ChatGPT will ask weird questions sometimes. So for your students to still have that critical thinking mindset on listening to the content of the question and making sure, does this seem like a question that could be asked? If it seems weird, they can respond to ChatGPT and say, no, ask me a different question, please. Right. So I have a document that I can share with you, which will set up a ChatGPT thread for you. So I'll copy this link and share it with you, but zoom out a little bit here. You'll see the steps are listed on the left and the prompts that you can do. So setting up the thread, copy and paste the following into a new thread for ChatGPT. So select all of it, copy, and put this into a new ChatGPT thread. And then engage the audio interaction. Press the headphones in the bottom right corner. And you can see I've got a little picture for you to enter in the audio interaction phase. So I'm going to share this along. There's the video example that I just shared with you. All of the steps are listed out. Suggestions for speaking. So just make sure you follow the steps step by step, and you should be able to interact with ChatGPT as desired. And that it is best used with a smart device. The desktop version, the computer version, isn't as strong for the audio interaction. So I recommend using a smartphone or tablet if you want to experiment with this. I encourage you to. I feel this is something that has a lot of potential for helping the students to learn. So again, that was not what I wanted. Share that and copy the link one more time. In the Zoom chat is comment access to this document. So you can open this up. You can play around with this. So do open up another ChatGPT window. I would recommend, again, using a smart device to interact with this. This is the best form of ChatGPT. It is free. Even the free version, you can use this. You don't need to pay for an account with this. So I'm going to put a little bit of Samurai Zen music on again, just for a little bit of background music. Do this for about 5 minutes. Let you have some time to play around with this. And then if you have questions, please raise your hand, and I'm happy to answer as best I can. Mr. Law, I've seen your question. I am consulting with the IDP team about this. Say 1 more minute. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right there, everybody. So that's all the time we have allocated for that. Right. So I did have a question from Mr. Law about the recording. Unfortunately, this recording is for internal purposes for IDP. They will not be releasing it after this. So you can certainly reach out to IDP for any further questions if you want. You see my name too. You're welcome to come hunt and find me down if you have specific questions. But sorry, but the video will not be made available for everybody. Righty. So questions about this ChatGPT options there? Questions for how to implement it? Thoughts? Yes, Mr. Tung.
Hi. When I try it, I think it's kind of an issue. Like when I'm trying to answer the question, and the ChatGPT suddenly interrupt me and come up with a new question. So can you show me like why that happens and how can I control that kind of activity?
Right. Yeah, and so I would orient you to my suggestion for step 3, because it sounds like maybe this didn't happen, where you just put your finger on the white circle, and then you will take manual control over that, and then you lift your finger off, and ChatGPT will know that you're finished. Otherwise, it depends on the environment you're in. It's supposed to be provided that you're still speaking. ChatGPT will be listening to you, but if you ever pause for an extended period, you're considering your next word, then ChatGPT, it's not a human. It's not perfect. Right. So it will assume that you're finished.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Glad to hear that you were experimenting with it, though. Any other questions? No. Okay. Well, feel free to chime in. Maybe somebody's a little bit delayed. I did have a question earlier from Mr. Duke about fun and easy to run activities during speaking class. Not some using the students, like for example, speaking part 2. I will usually partner them up for speaking part 2, and one partner is going to be the examiner, and so running through the script of the examiner. Now in this next part, you need to talk about a topic of blah 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 blah, but then the other partner is going to be speaking to them, and that means 2 minutes of one person just sitting there. So what can we do to use the person that's sitting there? What I encourage them to do is to make a note of follow-up questions that they would like to ask the other person based on their story. And so this gives them the chance to practice developing follow-up questions, but also, and gives them something to do, but also will simulate the rounding off question that happens at the end of speaking part 2. Where there's a simple question that happens after the person's finished their long turn. The examiner will ask just one question that's meant to just finalize everything. So that's one thing that I like to do with them for speaking activities. Otherwise, using those ChatGPTs, so topic-specific answers, educating them on a topic, giving them topic-specific language that they learn, and then the next class, revisiting those questions so that they don't have access to the answers anymore. Ming-Fung, I see you, and I'll answer you. I'll call on you in just a moment. But returning to the same questions later to give them the chance to revise those answers earlier. And hopefully they've not memorized it. We don't want a memorized answer, but we want them pulling out that topic-specific vocabulary and using it again. Oh, you disappeared, Ming-Fung. Oh, there's so many people, it's hard to find you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
There you are. Yes. Yeah. Hi.
Okay, so my question is a bit off topic, I guess, because it isn't relevant to ChatGPT, but it's about like marking criteria of IELTS speaking test. Okay,
sure.
So because I'm pursuing a master program in teaching English, and I learned about phonetics and phonology. So I wonder that in terms of the pronunciation criteria, do the examiners take into account all theories of phonetics and phonology, like such as manner and place of articulation on connected speech, because I learned all about that, and I wonder that whether students have to learn all about these theories. Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you for the question. Excellent question. And so it's going to depend on the examiner. You're going to have a range of people that are doing the examining. You're going to have people that are deep into the field, that have a delta, that they have a master's, that they've studied phonology as well. But you're also going to have people that are not as experienced, so they won't know manner and place of articulation or something like that. They should have an idea of some of those connected speech aspects, such as liaison, or if you want to call it catenation. They should have an idea of how that sounds, but they may not know the term for it. They will have received training, though, to listen for these things and discussion about that. Yeah. As for teaching, that type of thing, depends on your learners. Typically with younger learners, though, you don't want to bog them down with a bunch of meta language. Instead, either show them what's happening. So I broadly call liaison / catenation and intrusion. I combine those both together into something I call vowel linking, and how it is an initial vowel that is the key for that. And so lived in should technically be pronounced as lived in. And so I don't call it liaison, I don't call it catenation, I just take that last D and I put it into the in, lived in, so they say it correctly. And then another one too with the do good job, then I model them about how with do and should have a W sound in there, dua. And I'll show to them, why do we do that one? Well, because of our lip shape at the end of do, that we have that romantic kiss face going on there, do, which is also the beginning of a W sound. Why with that kiss face? So the dua, to help them understand those things. But it's all triggered by a first vowel sound, leading to the connection to the previous sound. But yeah, more about practical than it is about the meta language. Show them how it's done, preferably in larger groups of words as well, not so much about isolated. So that's why those example answers from ChatGPT, you can take it. Maybe you need some support for a little bit of that higher level vocabulary. Even for myself, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, that was a good term. I know this, but I didn't think to use it. And then you model it for them. And then substitution drilling, where they personalize it, they swap out some of the language, but then that leads to greater internalization and hopefully acquisition and use. Hope that answered your question there, Ming. Where's that Foon? Any other questions? Oh, right, Ming, coming back to that, I just wanted to point out the speaking band descriptors, and if you have a chance to dig into the pronunciation side, but you'll see it's just broadly talking about phonological features, and chunking being thrown in there as well, stress timing, but they don't talk about specific connected speech features. Yeah. Right, everybody. Well, it sounds like there are no more questions, so thank you very much for coming out this morning. I hope you found today to be useful, to be interesting, hopefully, that you got at least something new for you to be implementing in the classroom. And I'm going to hand this over to Ms. Ling.
Thank you so much, Dan. Các thầy cô thân mến, hy vọng là các thầy cô đã có một buổi sáng với rất là nhiều thông tin hữu ích dành cho việc giảng dạy của mình trong thời gian tới ạ. Cảm ơn các thầy cô rất là nhiều. IDP sẽ gửi lại email ngay sau sự kiện này ạ, để các thầy cô thứ nhất là có thể gửi lại các cái feedback cho IDP liên quan đến sự kiện ngày hôm nay, giúp cho IDP có thể cải thiện hơn các dịch vụ của mình. Và ngoài ra thì các thầy cô cũng sẽ nhận được bài test để mình có thể làm sau sự kiện. Và sau từ đó thì IDP sẽ có xác nhận về việc nhận certificate của các thầy cô. Dự kiến là bài test sẽ được gửi lại trong tuần tới ạ. Và certificate thì sẽ được gửi qua email dành cho các thầy cô đạt đủ điều kiện và dự kiến là sẽ được gửi trước ngày 30 tháng 9 ạ. Một lần nữa thì thay mặt cho IDP gửi lời cảm ơn các thầy cô đã đến tham dự sự kiện ngày hôm nay. Hy vọng là các thầy cô ngày hôm nay đã có thêm nhiều kiến thức bổ ích dành cho việc giảng